If you're one of those people who likes to outgeek your carmad friends, cast your eye over this lot and see how many you're familiar with. All of these automotive dead ends sold in tiny numbers, and as a result they're now pretty much forgotten. In some cases that's entirely deserved, as we don't fancy the Cadillac Cimarron or Saupenza being revived anytime soon. But not all of these cars were dogs. Some deserved a better fate. We'll start with cars aimed at the American market, then go on to Europe, and finally finish off with some marvelously obscure British ones, and other cars aimed at that market. America. Bricklin SV1 1974. Built in Canada, the Bricklin SV1 represented entrepreneur Malcolm Bricklin's vision of a safe sports car. He got the safety aspect right. The SV1 boasted a steel roll cage, side rails and sizable bumpers on both ends. He forgot about the sport aspect, though. The SV1 launched with a 220 horsepower AMC V8, but later models settled for a 175 horsepower Ford V8 strangled by emissions hardware and bolted to a 3-speed automatic transmission. It's a dark spot in a Bricklin's lengthy automotive career, which includes spearheading Subaru's entry into the US and selling Fiat's mid-engined X19 under the Bertone name during the 1980s. Jeep CJ8 1981. The Jeep CJ8 was a CJ7 with 10 additional inches of sheet metal between the axles. It retained the CJ7's legendary off-road capacity, but it was unique in its segment because it was more of a leisure-oriented model than a workhorse. Jeep didn't replace the CJ8 until it introduced the unlimited variant of the TJ Series Wrangler in 2004, and it has confirmed plans to return to the pickup segment with a Wrangler-based model by the end of the decade. Cadillac Cimarron 1982. The Cimarron was Cadillac's hotly anticipated answer to compact luxury cars like the BMW 3 Series and the then upcoming Mercedes-Benz 190. Instead of developing an entry-level model from scratch, Cadillac took the contentious route of re-engineering a Chevrolet Cavalier. It's like if Mercedes tried to turn a Renault 18 into the 190, underpowered and overly austere. The Cimarron was a total disaster. Adding a V6 to the lineup and later making it standard was too little, too late to save its career. The Cimarron left its mark on Cadillac history in the worst possible way. John Howell, Cadillac's product director from 2004 to 2010, kept a photo of the Cimarron in his office captioned "Lest we forget." Merca XR14 1985. This may look familiar to Europeans if not to many Americans. Ford believed selling its European Sierra XR4i in America would help it fend off competition from brands like BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Audi. It chose to market the car under a new brand called Merca, a name presumably chosen because it sounded more German, and was a project championed by one Bob Lutz. The US spec model received a turbocharged 2.3-litre four-cylinder engine instead of a V6, which explains the T in its name. Too esoteric, the XR4T retired in 1989 after Ford imported about 42,000 examples from Germany. The bigger Merca Scorpio suffered the same fate. Ford would not import any cars at all from Germany again until 2016, when the Ford Focus RS started arriving. Buick Reatta 1988. Offered as a coupe and as a convertible, the Reatta sat at the very top of the Buick lineup in the late 1980s. It was built largely by hand in a special facility located in Lansing, Michigan, and it was a relatively advanced car for its era. Buyers could order 16-way adjustable seats, automatic headlights and even a touchscreen, though this forward-thinking feature was phased out before the end of production. Buick built nearly 22,000 examples of the Reatta between 1988 and 1991. It was hardly a success. Executives predicted they could sell about 20,000 cars annually. The Reatta was not replaced, and Buick HASNT sold a two-seater model since. Chrysler TC by Maserati 1988. Chrysler, and Maserati's parent company De Tomaso, agreed to jointly build a sports car in the mid-1980s. The idea was brilliant on paper. Chrysler would leverage the prestige associated with the Maserati name to build a flagship model capable of taking on some of the finest two-doors on the American market. The decision to assemble the TC in Milan delayed the start of production by about 2 years. Engine options included a 2.2-litre four-cylinder with a Cosworth-designed 16-valve head and a V6 from Mitsubishi. Chrysler pulled the plug on the project after importing about 7,300 cars to America. In hindsight, using a true Maserati engine could have given the TC's career a significant boost. Dodge Dakota Sport Convertible 1989 buyers met the Dodge Dakota Sport Convertible with a collective wait, what followed by a why when it broke cover in 1989. As its name clearly implies, it was a Dakota trucklet with a manual soft top, though the sport part of the moniker was highly debatable. It didn't exist for long, and it's never spawned competition from Ford or Chevrolet, but it remains one of the most unique pickups in the 1980s. Saturn Series 1990 famously launched as a different kind of car company. Saturn took a novel approach to building an economy car to distance itself from other brands in the General Motors empire. In reality, it was an attempt at reclaiming some of the market share the group had reluctantly given up to its Japanese rivals during the 1980s. Saturn's first-generation Series model was an Econobox with plastic body panels offered as a saloon, a WGAON and a coupe. The company widely advertised its no-haggle pricing, and it built its millionth car in 1995, just 5 years after manufacturing its first car. Mass-produced and mass-destroyed, the original Saturn Series is a rare sight on American roads today. Eagle Vision 1992. The Vision represented Eagle's vision of an aerodynamic sports saloon in the early 1990s. It was designed to replace the Eagle Premier, which was closely related to Europe's Renault 25, and it shared its L-H architecture with comparable models built by Dodge and Chrysler. Lackluster performance and haphazard build quality sealed its fate, and Chrysler axed the Eagle brand after 1997. Honda Passport 1993. Honda's first SUV was actually an Isuzu. Instead of developing an off-roader from scratch, company officials asked Isuzu to slap Honda emblems on the rodeo and call it a day. It was blatant badge engineering, but the Passport was surprisingly popular in America thanks to Honda's reputation for building stellar cars. It carried on for 2 generations until Honda replaced it with the original Pilot, which it designed in-house. Dodge Neon ACR. Dodge Neon RT 1995-1998. Turning the Dodge Neon, which Chrysler manifestly crafted from a solid block of mediocrity, into a performance car was easier said than done. Dodge stepped up to the challenge with a Neon American Club Racer ACR, a sportier version aimed at enthusiasts on a tight budget. Starting with a base model, Dodge added a 150 horsepower 2.0-liter 4-cylinder engine, a shorter final gear, quicker steering hardware and a raft of suspension updates. The ACR even received adjustable Koni dampers in 1997, and buyers could choose to delete the AC and the radio. It's certainly wasn't an M3, but the Neon ACR became successful in Sports Car Club of America SCCA events during the 1990s. The Neon RT, introduced in 1998, bundled many of the ACR's upgrades in a street-friendly package. Suzuki X90 1995. The X90 was Suzuki's effort at turning the Vitara into a more lifestyle-oriented model, a vocation evidenced by its 3-box design and its removable roof panels. Many predicted tiny SUVs with thrift shop-like prices would be the next big thing in America, but the X90 fell flat on its head. Suzuki put it out to pasture after a 2-year production run. Today, it's best remembered for its role in promoting Red Bull energy drinks. Cadillac Catera 1997. The learnings from the Cimarron debacle faded during the 1990s. The Cadillac Catera likely looks vaguely familiar because it was known as the Vauxhall Opel Omega in Europe. It was yet another attempt by Cadillac to badge engineer its way into a segment dominated by Mercedes-Benz and BMW. Luxury buyers had a difficult time taking it seriously, using a duck-like cartoon named Ziggy to advertise the Catera as the caddy that zigs didn't help its career. Isuzu V-Cross 1997. Buyers looking for an SUV with unique styling could do a lot worse than the Isuzu V-Cross. Accurately previewed by a 1993 concept, it commanded attention with one of the wildest and most daring designs on the road. Isuzu built less than 6,000 examples of the V-Cross, with most of the production run going to America and a small chunk set aside for the Japanese market. Mercury Marauder 2003. Mercury revived the Marauder nameplate for the 2003 model year on a high-performance variant of the Grand Marquis, a body-on-frame land yacht prized by taxi cab companies and livery services. Presented as a 4-door muscle car, the Marauder used a 302 horsepower, 4.6-liter V8 engine sourced from the Ford Mustang Mach-1. Visual tweaks including a model-specific grille and tinted lights set the Marauder apart from other Panther platform-based saloons. Marauder production ended in 2004 after Mercury built about 11,000 examples. Ford mothballed the brand in 2011. Chevrolet SSR 2003. Chevrolet trailed rival Chrysler in the retro car game in the early 2000s. When Chrysler introduced the PT Cruiser, Chevrolet fired back years later with the HHR. When Plymouth launched the Prowler, Chevrolet came out with a Super Sport Roadster SSR. The 1940s pickup-inspired sheet metal header platform shared with the Chevrolet's Trailblazer SUV and featured a V8 engine. It offered 2 seats, a pickup box hidden under a tonneau cover and a retractable hardtop. Less than 25,000 examples were built in the same factory that churned out the Buick Reatta. GMC Envoy XUV 2004. GMC tried combining a pickup truck and an SUV, two of America's favorite vehicles, into a single model named Envoy XUV. It looked like a regular SUV at first glance, but it offered a retractable rear roof panel that made carrying taller items a breeze. A fold-down midgate similar to the one found in the Chevrolet Avalanche separated the passenger and cargo compartments. The Idea WASNT brand new the 1963 Studebaker Wagonaire offered a similar solution. The Envoy XUT still stands out as one of the few GMC models that wasn't a carbon copy of a Chevrolet. Acura ZDX 2009. Acura quietly admits it developed the ZDX as a two-door coupe, not as a four-door fastback. The extra set of doors was added at the last minute when market research suggested a two-door model would completely fail to win over buyers. In hindsight, the number of doors might not have mattered as much as the polarizing design. In the US, annual ZDX sales peaked at 3,259 examples in 2010, its first full calendar year on the market, before embarking on a nosedive. Acura dealers moved 1,564 examples in 2011, 775 in 2012, 362 in 2013 when production ended, and 78 in 2014. The final 2 unsold examples found a home in 2015. Saab 94X 2011. The 94X was Saab's long-awaited entry into the small luxury SUV segment. It shared its basic mechanical components with the Cadillac SRX, but it wore a Saab-specific design which borrowed styling cues from the second-generation 95. Too little, too late, the 94X couldn't steer Saab away from bankruptcy. The company's records indicate it built less than 1,000 examples of the 94X between February and December of 2011. The Europeans, Goliath GP 700 1950. Despite being blessed with a mere 2-cylinder 2-stroke 688cc engine, the GP 700 was highly innovative with front-wheel drive, full-width styling, and from 1952 there was even fuel injection. Volvo P1900 1956. No, that's not a typo. Before the famous P1800 came the P1900, but just 68 were made. It was a glass fiber-bodied open-topped sports car, inspired by the plastic Chevrolet Corvette. Faisal Vega HK 500 1959. If you wanted a fast, luxurious and exclusive Grand Tourer in the late 1950s or early 1960s, Faisal Vega was the company to go to. Things kicked off in 1954 with the FV, which was overhauled in 1957 to become the HK 500, with a 5.9 a 6.2-litre Chrysler V8, admittedly somewhat better known than most of the cars here. Faisal Vega was France's last chance of producing a proper luxury car marque, and it deserves better than being remembered for being the car acclaimed writer Albert Camus crashed and died in 1960. The company itself followed him in 1964. Monteverdi 37511967. Swiss BMW importer Peter Monteverdi moved into building ultra-exclusive Exotica in 1967. Over the next decade there would be a string of Chrysler engine specials, including the splendid 7.0-litre 375L high-speed pictured here. Fiat Dino 1967. Fiat's Dino used the same 2.0 or 2.4-litre V6 engines as Ferrari's car of the same name. All came with left-hand drive with Pininfarina responsible for styling the Spider edition, while Bertone designed the coupe. ISO Lele 1969. Italian firm ISO started out building the Isetta bubble car. BMW bought the rights to this, leaving ISO to make big, costly V8-engined luxury cars such as the Lele, 317 of which were made. Lamborghini Jarama 1970. Effectively a cut-down edition of Lamborghini's Espada, the Jarama featured the same 3,929cc V12 up front, 22 seating and 350,385 bhp. In 3 years, 327 were made between 1969 and 1974. Volkswagen K70. 1970 NSU developed the K70 to fill the gap between the Prinz and the Wankel-powered Row 80, yet the saloon ended up joining the Beetle in the Volkswagen portfolio. The K70 earned the distinction of becoming the brand's first full production car with a water-cooled, front-mounted engine. Volkswagen purchased NSU in 1969, and it received every project the brand was working on at the time as part of the deal. While officials initially cancelled the K70, they resurrected it upon realizing it was essentially ready for production. They put it back on track on the condition that it carry a Volkswagen emblem. About 210,000 examples rolled off the assembly line. NSU's plans for an estate version never materialized with Volkswagen at the helm. De Tomaso Longchamp's 1972 a short-wheelbase edition of the Jaguar XJS Deauville, the Longchamp featured a 330 bhp 5.8-litre V8. Offered as a coupe or convertible, 302 were produced in all. Monica 560-1972 intended to compete with Bristol. The Monica was a French confection that featured Chrysler V8 power. Finally bought by Panther, the car never really made production, although 35 or so were made. Citroën Lane 1976 nothing more than a rebadged Peugeot 104 with a 2CV engine. The Lane was remarkably unremarkable. It was sold only in its home market. But British consumers were able to buy the LN's successor, the 4-cylinder LNA with Pug 104 power. Few did though. Dacia Denim 1982 Romanian carmaker Dacia reckoned the Renault 12, first revealed in 1969, was cutting edge in the early 1980s, so it jumped at the chance to produce its own version. But when the marque was introduced to the UK, buyers steered clear. Alfa Romeo 1984 Alfa Romeo has made some odd decisions over the years, but this must rate as one of the balmiest. It sat between the equally forgettable Alfetta and disastrous 6 and even 4 a 1980s Alfa Romeo. It was unbelievably badly built. UK, Paramount 1.5-litre 1950. Throughout the 1950s there seemed to be a new low-volume British car maker springing up every week. Paramount was based in Derbyshire and built Ford-engine sporting cars, but just 70 or so were made before production ended in 1956. Marauder 1950 George Mackey and Peter Wilkes left the Rover Car Company to build their own sports car in conjunction with Spen King. The Rover P4-based Marauder was the result. All of 15 were made though. Swallow Durati 1954 a car that was arguably prettier than the Triumph TR2 on which it was based. Swallow was founded by Jaguar's William Lyons, then sold to the Giant Tube Investments conglomerate. It built 276 Doretis before the plug was pulled. Peerless GT 1958 later revived as the Warwick. The Peerless used Triumph TR3 mechanicals and a bespoke tubular steel chassis. Around 300 of these 4-seater coupes were produced in 1958 before Peerless disappeared. Elva Courier 1958 taking its name from the French for Chigo's LVA, the Courier was Elva's most successful model. Around 400 examples were made between 1958 and 1961, most powered by an MGA or MGB engine. Rochdale Olympic 1960 Rochdale came from, yes, Rochdale, and built its first glass fiber cars in 1952, with the incredibly aerodynamic Olympic appearing in 1960. Early cars featured Riley 1.5 engines. From 1962 there was 1.5-litre Ford Cortina power. Reliant Sabre 1961 initially offered with Ford Consul 4-cylinder power before it changed to a 6-spot Zodiac unit in 1962. The Sabre was originally developed for Israeli company Autocars. It was produced in both coupe and convertible forms. Tornado Talisman 1962 Tornado sprang up to offer glass fiber body shells that could be built from kits by enthusiasts in the garages. The Talisman was easily the company's biggest selling model. 186 were sold before the company closed in 1964. Uni-Power GT 1966 Universal Power Drives was better known for its agricultural machinery, but 75 examples of this interesting diversion were also created, each fitted with a mid-mounted mini-engine displacing either 998 cc or 1275 cc. Trident Clip in 1967 starting out as a TVR at the 1965 Geneva Motor Show, the Trident went into production independently, and lasted a decade, although just 200 or so were made in all. Piper GTT 1968. Piper began building racing cars, then moved into road-going models in 1967. However, over a 6-year run just 100 or so of these plastic-bodied sports cars were made. Most had Ford power, but some came with Alfa Romeo or Austin Healey engines. Gilbern. Invader 1969. The only car company to be based in Wales so far, Gilbern set up shop in 1959 and built over 1,000 cars in all, including around 600 of this final model, with Ford V6 power. Ford GT70 1970. While the GT40 quickly became an icon, its successor, the mid-engined V6 power GT70, didn't take long to fade into obscurity. It was built by Ford of Britain for rallying, but never got that far, and just 6 were made. Marcos Mantis 1970. Marcos was renowned for its curvy cars, so the angular Mantis came as rather a shock to the system when it was unveiled. Power was from a Triumph 2.5-litre engine and just 32 were made. Clan Crusader 1971. Set up by ex-Lotus engineers in 1969, the Crusader was killed off by the energy crisis of 1973. The project was revived in 1985 as the Clover, but that soon failed too. Scorpion Coupe 1973. Like the Clan Crusader, the Scorpion had a rear-mounted Hillman Imp 998cc engine and was killed off by the energy crisis. With its neat glass fiber body shell it promised so much. Lonsdale Saloon and Estate 1983. Mitsubishi set up a factory in Australia to build these rebadged Sigmas for the UK, with a choice of 1.5, 2.0 or 2.6-litre engines. Hardly any were sold, unsurprisingly. Avante 140TC 1986. Lincolnshire-based Vegan Tune had been restoring and tuning Lotus Elens for years. This was the company's own interpretation of the Lotus Classic, with Ford-based 1.7 or 1.8-litre twin-cam engines. AC Ecos 1988. A car that never reached production. The signature was meant to supersede the 300 ME with an Alfa Romeo Source 2.5-litre V6. But there wasn't the money to develop it. Another one of those Mike Haverbeans that automotive history is littered with. Sao Penza 1991. Take one defunct Mazda 323, rebrand it, and what do you have? Answer: a Sao Penza. Sao was an offshoot of the South African motor corporation SAMCOR, but in less than 2 years the Penza had been withdrawn from UK sale. Asia Rockster 1994. Unveiled in 1990 but sold in the UK only between 1994 and 1998, this poorly made 4x4 wasn't Kia's finest hour. That's because it was Kia which sold the car on behalf of Asia, which turned out to be a bad move. Kynoth GT 1996. Looking like an early 70s Opel GT drop-top, the Kynoth featured a 3.0-litre 6-pot Senator engine and, notably, a folding hardtop before they became popular elsewhere. Strathcarron SC5A 2000. First seen in prototype form in 1996, the production SC5A was ready in 2000. But type approval changes quickly ruled the car illegal, which is why just 20 were produced. Close.